Hey, joining us now, Senator, Central Virginia, Republican, Ryan McDougle. He's also one of the head honchos in Tommy Norman's leadership team. Senator McDougle, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Jeff. John, good to be with you. How are you doing today?
I tell you what, I'm fine, and Merry Christmas. I know you're fired up about the holidays, but then you got your big General Assembly session coming up, 2016. You guys hanging on to control of the Senate in November. That was a big deal. So you have the majority. As a key member of the Senate majorities now in the Virginia leadership team, Senator, what are going to be some of your top priorities in this upcoming General Assembly?
Well, John, I am fired up about Christmas, and I have to be because I have a 4-year-old little girl whose name is Reagan, and she is just terribly worried that all this rain is going to make it hard for Santa to come visit her. But in the midst of preparing for Santa's arrival, we are preparing for the legislative session. And I think that you will see more of what we have done over the last year. As you know better than most, we were not in the majority a little over a year ago, but when we came back into the majority, we've passed budgets on time, we've been responsible with your money, we've passed through common sense legislation, doing things like reforming the structure of the ABC. So we've done a lot of very important work in a very short time, and you will continue to see that kind of commitment from the Republican leadership in the Senate.
Now, what is your level of commitment to work with the Democrats, Senator McDougle? I mean, obviously, you've got a slim majority, 21-19. You've got a couple of Democrats that have had a history of working with Republicans on various legislation, from Senator from Norfolk, Kenny Alexander, on down. How do you envision yourself working with the minority and really trying to get things done that make sense?
Well, in the Senate, we do have a slim majority, but it is majority. And we need every Republican to be with us as we pass a budget, as we elect judges, because those take 21 votes in the Constitution. And I do think we will work with Democrats where we can find agreement. And there are areas like education. Kenny and Alexander and I have worked on a number of key issues over the years in education. And I think that we can also find a lot of areas where we agree in areas like law enforcement. There will be some areas where we'll have disagreement, and one of those is Medicaid expansion. So we will work a lot together on things that make sense for Virginia, and on some of those things that I do not think make sense for Virginia, we'll have some disagreements.
Okay, Senator, what did you think right off the bat of Terry McAuliffe's, I don't know what you call it, tax and spend program? He's got a corporate income tax cut in there. That was met with a lot of enthusiasm by some people. He's also got a budget that he just rolled out, which is pretty aggressive, isn't it? $100 billion or so. A lot of that money, people are trying to find out where exactly it's going to come from. Medicaid expansion, which is dead. He's trying to pay for some of it with that. But he did present a budget. Now, what do the Republicans do? Do you react to it? Do you digest it, dissect it? What happens?
Well, this is the constitutional process in Virginia. And this is the first full budget that Governor McAuliffe has presented. So we will take his budget, which we've done. We will go through it over the next 30 days as we prepare, or 20-some days as we prepare for session. And then we'll do our jobs over the following 60 days. Because that's what the long session of the legislature does. We look at the budget, we look at the governor's priorities, we look at our priorities, and we make some tough decisions. But the governor's presentation of the budget is at the beginning point of the process. It is not at the end. And certainly as we look through it, we're going to not expand Medicaid, so we're going to have to deal with that particular issue. And there are a number of things that the governor funded through the Medicaid expansion in the budget. Those clearly were not the priorities that the governor had, because we were also equally clear that Medicaid expansion was not going to pass. So we're going to have to find ways to make tough decisions on some of those items. But I think you hit one of the other nails on the head, and that is we have to be sure that the revenue stream is there, that the economy in Virginia is going to be growing at the levels the governor indicated before we spend any of that money or commit to it. So the next 75 to 90 days are going to be very intense as we go through that budgetary process, but it is one that we will take very deliberately and seriously to come up with a good product for Virginians on time.
Senator McDougle, let's get to this pot of money that's out there that people keep talking about. This several $billions that the federal government is saying that they're going to fund Medicaid expansion. You've got to pay 10% of it. You look at other states, whatever you guys estimate, it's way off the charts. But now McAuliffe is saying, look, forget about taking that from the general fund. Let's just do this provider tax. The hospitals will pay the tax. That'll fund the 10%. We'll get this boatload of money from heaven from the federal government. You'll be to expand Medicare, insure another 400,000 people, pennies from heaven. People get insurance. Hospitals are happy. Care providers are happy. 400,000 people have insurance. It's not going to cost the state a dime. Why would you turn that money down?
Well, number one, I think Bill Howe, as Speaker of the House, has been very clear that that is a non-starter item with the House delegates. So we need to look at things where we can come to solutions to get the budget done on time. The second thing is the money has to come from somewhere. So if it is not coming from the state coffers, your tax dollars, then it's going to come from other individuals paying into the system. There are no free lunches. So we need to come up with other solutions that will help us take care of our obligations. And clearly, in my mind, the Medicaid system is not one that is the most efficient or effective in providing health care to Virginians or Americans, for that matter. And so if we are looking to expand that program, that is not the best model for us to use. And we need to be looking at other options. So as we go through this process, it is very lengthy, and certainly you see some hospitals that are in favor of the quote-unquote provider tax, and you see a number of hospitals that are not in favor of it as well going forward. But we're going to have to work through our budgetary process and use the dollars that we have in tax revenue, make sure that they are real dollars and coming from sources that we can rely on as we craft a budget, and then make tough decisions at the end of the day.
Well, there are going to have to be, obviously, some tough decisions being made. Now, last year, the budget process was non-eventful, right? Not the battle you had in 2014 by any means. It was non-eventful. Budget got passed. Not a lot of amendments. Is the majority Senate's leadership working relationship with Terry McAuliffe going into 2016? Do you think maybe it's softened a little bit? Maybe he doesn't have the edge he had. Maybe he's figured out that he can't really get anything done with bluster, that he's got to work with Senator McDougle, Senator Obenshain, Senate Leader Tommy Norman, Bill Howe. Do you sense a difference in McAuliffe's demeanor?
John, I don't know, and we're all individuals. We all have personalities. We all have our positives and negatives. But at the end of the day, we also all have a job to do, and we're individually elected by our constituents to do a good job and to make sure that the job gets done responsibly. When we've worked through different issues over the last number of years, there are times that we've agreed with Governor McAuliffe, and there are numerous times where we've disagreed with Governor McAuliffe. But we have always said, let's focus on where the priorities are in the budget, where we should be spending money and not spending money, and come up with a good product. And we've done that. And we did it in 2015. It was a very challenging year. You might remember in the fall of 2014, we were looking at a $2.5 billion hole in the budget. And we took some pretty dramatic action in the fall to make sure we were able to deal with that. First time any of us can remember taking action of that significant budget level outside of the normal January, February, March legislative process. So we are willing to take the steps needed. And again, we'll work with the governor where we have agreement. Some of our priorities will be different. Some of our ideas will be different, and we will probably have some vigorous discussions about those. But the vast amount of decisions everybody will be able to agree on, and we'll work together. And, governors are in place for a period of time. In the legislature, we work with Republican governors, different governors. This is my fourth governor that I've worked with, and at the end of the day, we always find a way to deliver a budget that's responsible for Virginia.
Right. Well, that is absolutely the main thing. No questions being able to work with these governors. I had House of Delegates member from Virginia Beach, Republican Glenn Davis on a few minutes ago. I'm going to ask you the same questions because it's timely. Yesterday, the House caucus leadership had a press call on their desire to, change, loosen COPN. This is a complicated issue. People say, what is that acronym, COPN? What the hell does that mean, right? Certificate of Public Need, basically allowing hospitals to come in and compete with other hospitals or provide services to compete with other hospitals. Kind of a complicated thing. And a lot of Republicans say, it's a good thing. Get rid of it. It's good for the free market, free enterprise. Let them all compete. But the reality is they're not really competing because it's not really a free market health system, Senator, as you know, because hospitals are mandated by the government to offer indigent care. For one, people come into the emergency room, they can't pay, they still get into the hospital. They also have to offer non-profitable services like pediatrics and birthing and things like that. They make no money on it, lose money on it. And so if you relax COPN, what happens is you can have hospitals that will come into areas and cherry pick only the most profitable services that hospitals that are already there have to provide by statute. So it's not really a free market. And then the only thing they make money on is the things they can get cherry picked to hurt their margin, which puts additional pressure on hospitals' bottom line. And many hospitals in these rural areas, center of South Side and Southern Virginia, they're simply going out of business. It's a disaster. So how does it make any sense to change COPN laws now?
But, John, you framed the issue perfectly. It is complicated. It is one that has been in place for working over 35 years, and whenever you have a system that's developed for that length of time, making significant changes in it or alterations has positive and negative, and we need to work through that process very deliberately. I do believe that we do need to look at that process, look at reforms, look at where we can add in some free market ideas. So I think that this is a very important debate, very important discussion. Healthcare is one of the largest economic items in our personal budgets and in our public budgets. So it is one that we need to look at. But we also need to be prudent and cautious as we work through that system. And I think a wholesale elimination all of a sudden would probably lead to some consequences that would not be good for Virginians. But I do think it is time for us to work in the reform direction and look at how we can reinstitute those free market ideals back into the healthcare system. And that's one of the frustrations I've had with the healthcare debate over the last half a dozen years is everybody's been focusing on the government expanded system and not talking about how do we make sure that people have access to better healthcare at a better price. All we've been doing is putting things in place to raise the tax and raise the cost and raise your insurance premiums, but not what we can do to reform the system. And I think that that's the direction the legislature is going to go. There has been a commission that's been looking at this over the summer and fall, and I think if you talk to some of those members, individually, that you will find it is a very complex and difficult situation, as you just expressed. And so we need to be creative, we need to be thoughtful, but we need to act deliberately and not just reactionarily going forward. And I think the House is setting the same tone as we have the conversations with Bill Howe and Kirk Cox and their leadership team. They're also looking at what can we do in this direction that is responsible and reasonable, and making sure that health care in high quality is still available to the public.
All right, that makes sense. We're with Senator Ryan McDougle, Republican, 4th District. That's the Hanover, Central Virginia area. He is second in command in the majority in the state Senate, second to Majority Leader Tommy Norment.